Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, is this the first movement? Well, yeah, it is. It's the first movement by the CDC that we can actually get a little bit of hope from. A little bit of glimmer of hope that cruising could start shortly, relatively, in the United States from US ports and get this show on the road again. But there's still some hooks and tricks, but let's just take a look at it. So in a report to USA Today, the CDC seems to go to them a lot for their press releases. The CDC has sent a letter to the cruise line industry, and in the letter they say that we acknowledge the cruising will never be zero risk and that the goal of the CSO's phased approach is to resume passenger operations in a way that mitigates the risk of transmission aboard cruise ships and across its port communities. And that's what we've been saying all along. A lot of their guidance seemed to be to get to zero. And so now they're saying, like we've all been saying, you're not going to get 100% no COVID. You can't guarantee it in the White House. You can't guarantee it in your grocery store. Why should you have to guarantee it on a cruise ship, if you know what I mean? It should all be about how you keep it away, how you keep most people safe, how you keep it from spreading. That's what it should be all about. And so they said that, you know, in the letter they say it came out with a little bit more of a specific timeline. Cruise ships could begin passenger voyages in the United States by mid-July. And looking at the timeline, I hope there's some changes in their guidance that's going to allow for that, because it takes a while to get cruise ships up and running. But of course they say that it's depending on the cruise line's pace and compliance with the CDC's framework for conditional sailing. So have they changed their framework for conditional sailing? Well, they've adjusted it. And they've basically come down to, after many meetings with the CDC twice a week for the last 2 weeks with the cruise line industries, and the cruise line industries giving their points about vaccinations and what they're going to be doing and all that, the CDC finally came back and has come up with their own adjustment now. Now they say they look forward to continued engagement with the industry, and urges the cruise lines to submit the Phase 2A port agreements as soon as possible in order to keep that timeline of July. But let's look at those 5 guidances that they've issued. Because remember, they just did additional guidance on April 2nd, and it really didn't say much to give cruise ships any hope. So the first one is, ships can bypass the required simulated test voyages carrying volunteers and jump to sailings with paying passengers if 98% of the crew and 95% of the passengers are fully vaccinated. Now this is good, because Royal Caribbean said that they will sail with only vaccinated people and their crew's going to be vaccinated. We have Virgin Voyages has said the same thing. Disney has said the same thing, and Norwegian Cruise Line has said the same thing. The only one who hasn't said that is Carnival, really, as far as the big cruise lines are concerned. But now are we going to run into that? Let's start fighting in Texas and Florida now. Some of the biggest, especially Florida, the biggest cruising states. Because the governor there said, you can't show proof of having vaccinated cruises. Well, if the cruise lines want to bypass all those test simulations and stuff like that, they need to have passengers prove that they've been vaccinated. So what is going to happen there? That is my big question. Big question going forward. And like I said, I wish government officials on both sides would just keep their noses clean and stay out of business, if you will. They say they're for business, but they're going to not let you know what I mean. It's just, politics ruins everything, and I wish they would have just stayed out, because now we're going to have this situation. You watch. Okay. Second rule, but you know what? No test cruises if you're doing vaccinated only cruises. That's a big jump forward. A big jump forward in the timeline for getting cruising started. Number 2, CDC will review and respond to applications from cruise lines for simulated voyages within 5 days. The previous review period was expected to take about 60 days to apply for that. That is really good news because at one point the CDC said that they guarantee that they will respond to the cruise lines in a timely manner. Timely manner for the CDC has been months in all of their responses so far. Look, they still haven't really responded to their letter from Norwegian Cruise Line, which is almost a month away. So that's good news. They're setting up a timeline of when they have to respond for a change instead of when everybody else has to respond to them. So that's a good thing. That will speed up the timeline much, much faster. Number 3, the CDC will update testing and quarantine requirements for passengers and crew on sailings with paying passengers to align with the CDC's guidance for fully vaccinated people. So for example, instead of taking a PCR lab test ahead of boarding, vaccinated passengers can take a rapid antigen test upon embarkation. Again, another big step forward for vaccinated cruises. You don't have to try and arrange that 3-day test ahead of time. You don't have to show up with all those papers and things like that. You just show up at the port, they do a quick antigen test on your embarkation day, and onto the cruise ship you go. Much less hassle for us as passengers as far as getting on a cruise ship. So I think that was a good one as well. But again, you see how they are leaning towards vaccinated cruises while not mandating it, which now we'll get into that a little bit later. 4th one, the CDC has clarified that cruise ship operators may enter into a multi-port agreement rather than a single port agreement as long as all ports and local authorities sign the agreement. Again, that's a big jump forward. If you were sailing out of Fort Lauderdale, if you were sailing out of Miami, if you were sailing out of Orlando, you had to have different port agreements with every single one separate, write them all up separate, have separate agreements, separate. Now you can just go to all 3 cruise ports and say, do you agree to this? And everyone can sign it and it's done. It's over with. You don't have multiple documents and procedures where it might be different in Miami than it is in Fort Lauderdale. So you want consistency around everything. And this, again, at least now they're allowed to do that, which could shorten that process again. So again, optimistic here. And finally, number 5, the CDC has clarified guidance on quarantine guidelines for passengers who may be exposed or contract COVID-19. For example, local passengers, so if you're sailing out of Fort Lauderdale and you live in the immediate area or driving with driving distance, you'd be able to drive home, and passengers who have traveled by air to the cruise line can quarantine in a hotel. They don't have to quarantine in designated government spots and places like that. You don't have to have a port facility set up to house people who have been in contact perhaps with one person who came down with mild symptoms or who's tested positive on the cruise. Again, that's a big clarification. Because if you remember the first time, they were basically saying you almost had to set up a housing facility near the port where you're going to have guaranteed amount of space that you can put people. Now, if you can drive home and quarantine there. You don't have to stick there. So all the people who are afraid of being locked on a cruise ship for a month and being stuck there if COVID breaks out, that should ease your mind as well. That restriction's not there. You can just drive home. You can just go to a hotel. They've clarified that. You're not going to be stuck on the ship. You're going to be able to get off. And it's a much better situation. So yeah, a lot of good things in here. A lot of good things. I just wish that they would have come out and said, you know what, we recommend getting vaccinated for the cruise. Just for the sake of, maybe the governments in Texas and Florida will, ease that. Now, if the cruise lines say it's a vaccinated only cruise and you have to show proof online as you're buying your ticket, you know, scan your document, enter in your vaccination number, whatever that might be, as you're buying your ticket, as opposed to showing proof when you get to the port, that may be a workaround that the cruise lines can work with. And the government has said they've only said that you can't ask for it when you're there. It doesn't say anything about asking for it online, considering that they're not just dealing with Florida residents, they're dealing with residents from across the United States. And many of the other states are setting up, you know, vaccination passports, if you will. So there's a lot of questions in there, but in all honesty, this is the best news we've heard in a long, long time from the CDC on cruising, and it seems to be the most reasonable so far. They've actually said that you don't have to get 100% safe now. You just have to know how to mitigate it and how to respond to it. You don't have to have multiple port agreements. Passengers aren't going to get stuck on there. You don't even have to do the test cruises if your crew and passengers have been vaccinated, which is great. That's a big, big plus, because all the cruises and all the people sailing over to the Caribbean, they've all been vaccinated. They're okay with it. Everyone's going. That's not a problem. So why can't we do that here in the United States? So I think a lot of the pressure about the jobs being lost, the fact that cruising is opening up in many, many other places across the world, and the vaccines are doing a good job in the United States of keeping everything down. Death tolls on its way down. Infection rates way down. It's looking much better in the United States, and I think the pressure also of people contacting the government officials and that emailing campaign. I sent in 7 in my email accounts, by the way. And I'm in Canada. I don't know how much good that will do. But I did. And they've received over 140,000 different people sending in comments to local representatives and the CDCs and saying, get cruising started. So I think all this combined is making it that we just might see some cruising. Now, looking at those timeline restrictions, if you're vaccinated and there's no hiccup in Florida and Texas with the needing to be vaccinated, that will really bring up that timeline much, much faster to be able to sail. I mean, Port Galveston's already setting up a vaccination day for 2 cruise ships for Carnival. So yeah, this could happen much sooner than we ever thought, just yesterday or the day before. So I'm glad to see the CDC is turning a page, and let's hope that the government stays quiet and lets the cruise lines just get back to work. It's not something that's going to happen forever. You're not going to need to show proof of being vaccinated forever. You just need to let the cruise lines start making money so we don't lose more ships to the junkyards in India, and we don't lose more people's jobs, homes, businesses, livelihoods. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think this is a really good sign? In all honesty, it's the first good sign I've seen in months. And it's the first time I'm actually hopeful it will work. Let me know in the comments down below, and until next time, wow. I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Let's see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world, and even cruising in the United States, because it just might happen now. Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.